Good afternoon. I want to thank you for coming today. We take this issue very seriously. I want to thank the members of the Mississippi Department of Health that are here with us today. Yesterday at approximately 11:50 in the afternoon, Mississippi Department of Health called for myself and the mayor to come meet with them at their offices to discuss samples that were taken in June of 2015. We immediately mobilized and got to their offices within the hour, and we had somewhat of a brief discussion about the samples that were taken. There were 58 samples taken from homes in the Jackson area, or in our public drinking water system area. And 13 of those samples tested, they tested above the actionable level for lead. What that means is the city is required to take additional compliance measures. It does not mean that the city has violated the Safe Drinking Water Act. And I want to repeat that again. It does not mean that the city has violated the Clean Drinking Water Act, or the Safe Drinking Water Act, and our water is safe. We immediately dispatched our staff from our water facilities division within the hour to get to those 13 residences to have sample kits taken from Mississippi Department of Health to those residents to have the water resampled immediately, and we expect to receive those results within the next 2 weeks. So my folks were out again this morning to collect those samples from those homes so that we can get those test results in. We'll also be doing additional sampling. So we will be pressing to sample up to 100 locations over the course of the next week or so to get those samples in and get them run. We're required to notify all of our residents or all of the consumers on the public drinking water system of this exceedance, and we are doing that. That notification will start going out today. We'll also be posting on the website a required notice which has information that answers questions about how to deal with lead in the home. Mississippi Department of Health is going to speak to this, but we have every reason to believe that this is home dependent, which means that it is related to the internal plumbing of the home, and that's largely because we had 58 samples taken, only 13 of them exceeded the actionable level, and there were homes on the same street that were sampled that did not exceed those levels. And we believe that this is what we would consider a transient issue that is possibly related to how the water chemistry reacted with the internal plumbing at that particular time. So with the actions that the city has taken, in addition to the regulatory requirements that we have to do as far as increased sampling and monitoring and notification, we're looking at all of our water quality data before and after this event. We're looking at the plant data, what was occurring in the operation. We'll be looking at anything related to pipes in the area to make doubly sure that our water remains safe for all of our consumers. You want to speak?
Sure. So we have every reason to believe that this was a transient issue, and we are, the water supply is collecting more samples. I think it's important to know that what happens with water systems is there is lead in pipes and lead in solder in homes, especially in homes built before 1983. And so the best thing people can do if they're concerned about lead in their water is make sure that they don't use the hot water for cooking, because it's important, because the hot water can increase the leaching from the solder or from pipes. And it's also important to run the water for a minute or two in the morning. Now, I'm not saying that every home has this issue. This was just a sample of homes, and it's the compliance samples that are done every 3 years. Because of this issue, the city is doing more sampling. So I think it's important to know that we are very hopeful that this is just going to be a transient issue.
Dr. Courier, you said
Yes.
these samples were taken back in June of 2015.
That's correct.
7 months later, why are we just not getting these
Yeah,
results?
that's a really good question. So what happens with the EPA lead and copper rule and the way the EPA does things, and we do their work here, is that the compliance period is the 3-year period, and we don't actually calculate whether a system is in compliance until after that period is over. Now, let me assure you that we're going to take a look at how that's done and see if we don't need to change that.
I'm not sure what you just said.
I know. It is a different language, isn't it? So the compliance period is a 3-year period. There are samples that are required to be done in the summer for copper and lead because of, I'm not sure why.
So during the warm months?
I guess the bottom line is why the long delay from testing to the results that we're learning about now?
So maybe I can try to help explain. So
Step to the microphone.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So in compliance testing for the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, has some rules about testing for lead and copper of all systems in the country. And if there are low levels that have been reported in the system over time, that reporting is a 3-year period. And in that 3-year period, samples are sent into the public health lab to be evaluated. These samples came in June, but samples from around the state come in different times, and some of them, or all of them, come in during that 3-year cycle. At the end of the 3-year cycle, a compliance report of all these samples is made and reported out. And when those reports were reported, the City of Jackson came up indicating that their sample had levels that the EPA mandates be reviewed.
So when did you get the results that the water samples had higher than acceptable lead levels?
I believe that was in July.
I'm sorry, we've known since July that we had higher than acceptable lead levels, and we just now told people in January. I'm just making sure we're all on the same page.
So the action levels are the level that mandates this additional education, and that's really what the action is that EPA has, is that there is additional education that must be given to homeowners, and then there must be increased monitoring for the next 6 months so that we can review the sample and see if this was transient or if it is something that's larger than that.
Were these the 13 homeowners, were they immediately notified when you got the results?
No, they were not.
Again, I guess the basic question is, why weren't they notified immediately after the health department got these results? Nobody seems to be able to answer that question.
Well, again, because this is a compliance sample that we ran. This isn't a sample where a homeowner sent us something to review and report back. This is part of a compliance sample for an entire system. In other words, for the entire City of Jackson, these 58 samples were representative of that particular system to be evaluated.
So is it not in the policy if they are irregular to notify them? That's not part of the...
It's not, and I think that's what Dr. Kerr was saying is, you know, I think it's time for us to look at that and see if that policy needs to change. And I really think that it is something we need to look at and make some changes in the compliance policies. It's the EPA's policy. It's the federal policy that we follow because, again, we do EPA's work. But I think it is something we will review.
What can a homeowner do to find out whether or not they may have this issue in their house?
Well, they can have their water tested, and the information will be provided through the City of Jackson. It'll be on the website. We'll have information of where that can be tested. It can be tested at the State Department of Health's lab. In fact, there's a number that people can call. If you want to take that, it's 601-576-7518 if they would like to have their water tested. There's also information about a private lab that's available in Mississippi that's on that same education piece that everyone will be receiving.
Are there any basic things to look out for, or is it just about testing?
Well, you know, again, this is something that occurs in the home. So these are samples that were taken by homeowners, and then it's sent in for evaluation as part of the Jackson sample. But because it's in the piping, and especially in some of the older homes, some of the things that Dr. Curry said were, don't use the hot water, drink out of hot water fountains where water's been, maybe sitting in a hot water tank for a while. If you get up in the morning, you might want to run water for a little bit before you drink it so that water's coming from the outside and it's moving through that pipe and not water that's been in that pipe overnight. But those are things that, back when I was a child, my grandmother said, don't do some of these same things. So I guess They even knew about it back then, that lead is just part of the processes in some of the older homes and in the construction of those homes.
Where were these homes geographically?
Yeah,
There were homes in Southwest Jackson, and there were a few homes in North Jackson.
When were the homeowners notified that they had lead in the water?
As soon as the city was notified, we dispatched someone from that meeting yesterday, so they were provided sample kits, and our folks have met with the homeowners face-to-face to get those samples done. They went back this morning to collect those samples to get them to the lab.
So yesterday is when they were first notified?
So yesterday, as soon as the city was notified, we dispatched them within the hour.
And have those homeowners been told to stop drinking the water?
It has been explained to them what occurred, that the water was being retested, and they are being educated. They will receive the same notice. They are provided the same notice. They are counseled that you should flush your system. This is not a situation where you have to stop drinking the water. You need to flush the system. If there's any questions as to whether or not you have a problem, you can have your water tested at the private lab, or you can call the number. That information will be on the notification that we provide. There are also countertop devices and under-the-counter devices that you can get that are specific for lead reduction in the water as well.
So what about like the testing
It's like a
kits at,
filter.
Home Depot or Lowe's? Can you use that to test your water?
You can use test kits, but you need to make sure that you read the information on those test kits and make sure that it will provide accurate results.
And do you know if all of these homes have the older pipes?
We're assessing, looking at the age of the home, so we're pulling data and we're reviewing all available data to us so that we know as much about this as possible to keep folks informed.
How much lead are we talking about?
The actual level is 15 parts per billion. These exceeded 0.15 milligrams per liter.
Right, so how
Can you
much
translate
over
that to?
Can you translate what that looks like for a homeowner?
I'm just wondering, because you said it's over 15 parts per billion.
Right.
It was
So
like
how much
17.
over?
Yeah.
That's what I'm
Yeah,
looking for.
yeah.
Oh, I think they were all, the
Depended on the home.
values were different, and it's dependent upon the home.
Right. So
But
where do
actually,
they range
some
from?
limits were between 0.017 to 0.02.
Can we, would it be okay if we said something about what we've done as far as looking at lead levels in the city? Would that be okay?
As far as
The kids.
The kids?
the kids,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. And so in Mississippi, lead levels is a reportable condition. So we get information on lead for every child 6 years of age and younger, whether it's a high level or a low level. And so, subsequent to this information, we have looked at every child lead level in Jackson and Hinds County for the past 5 years to see if there's been any change. Fortunately, there has not been an increase in children with elevated lead levels. As a matter of fact, 2015 was slightly less than 2014. So from all the information that we've gathered so far, there is no indication of a threat to human health.
And how many kids are in this situation involving the 13 homes? Do these homes have kids?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Actually, and we broke it down by zip code, and even in the zip codes where all of these events were, they did not see an increase in children with elevated lead, which is very contrary to other parts of the country where they saw elevated levels of lead in children, and we have not seen that here in Jackson.
Can you tell us what's the potential health risk for children?
For
assuming higher level?
Yeah, for young children, particularly infants, 0 to 1 year of age up to 2 years of age, that's the most important time period because the brain is developing and there can be some cognitive delays. But fortunately, lead is tested routinely in young children. It's a standard recommendation for pediatricians to check for lead, and they actually lowered the lead threshold in recent years to less than 5 from less than 10 a few years ago. And even with that value, we're not seeing an increase in in lead in children, thankfully.
So there's no concern for any of these people, being that they haven't found out until yesterday, as far as the levels, and then of course consumption? I mean, are they okay? They have no worries, or?
Certainly this is something that we really want to continue to look at. We don't have any indication that there's a problem.
Do you want to talk about lead in the children who've had elevated lead and where it comes from?
Yeah, so if we think about where kids get lead, primarily it comes from around the home. One of the most common sources of lead is actually white paint. In decades past when they used lead to make white paint. And so we do investigations of elevated lead. So any kid with a lead level over 15, we do a site evaluation. And we actually have not had any of those in Jackson in the past year, which is good. So no markedly elevated leads have been identified in children in Jackson over this time frame. But the majority of the findings are going to be white paint or paint dust or paint that gets into the soil. That's going to be the primary source of exposure. When we talk about the water, it's important to remember that it's older homes and it's going to be water that's sitting in the pipes for a period of time, and that if you flush the water out, it's only that first morning draw that's going to be something to be concerned about. These are relatively low levels of lead, but we certainly need to be very conscientious and work it up aggressively. But there's no indication of a health impact at this point, but we're going to continue to take it very seriously and look at every mechanism to see if there's something going on when you do something about it.
I know that you said low levels, but higher than it's accepted by the EPA.
Exactly.
I know you said this policy needs to be updated, but did no one think that you should probably let the city know before now? Regardless of the policy?
That's a separate issue that's related to the rules of how the EPA sampling is going. But yeah, particularly with our enhanced knowledge of the impacts, certainly that's something that really should happen.
And Keisha, how certain are you and city officials that this is not a situation of lead contaminated water in the city's water system?
Well, our drinking water is safe. The city has not had any compliance violations for its drinking water. And we continue to stand by that. And this is not considered a violation of the Safe Drinking Water Act. And when you ask about being higher than the actionable level, what that means is you have to take precautionary measures and do additional monitoring and sampling. And it is quite possible that and what we'll be looking for, quite frankly, is that in this resampling of those 13 homes, that we expect to see those levels down below actionable levels. But I just want to stress the things that we do on a daily basis. We are sampling the water that comes into the plant. We're sampling the water before it leaves the plant. We take the required samples for a host of different constituents on the regular basis, as we're required to. Monthly, quarterly, daily sampling routine we exercise for our drinking water. We also do regular flushing in our system. Sometimes we get calls about why hydrants are running when they're flushing, and we flush near schools, we flush near hospitals. Before school goes back into session every year, our folks are flushing in and around those school areas to make sure that any water that's been sitting stagnant is cleared of the system. So we have a regular routine that we follow, and because of that, because we've been very diligent about our practices, we have not had any compliance violations where safe water is concerned.
Does the city do any testing or monitoring or analysis outside of what the state does?
I will have to look at all of because we run a number of samples. And if there are any, for instance, with boil water notices, whenever we have a water main break, we sample to make sure that it's safe to put that water line back into service. So that, again, is why you may see hydrants running in the area of a break. But we have, and we'll make sure it's posted on the website, all of the samples that we collect so that people are well aware of the measures that we take to make sure that our drinking water is safe.
So in plain language, should homeowners be afraid?
No.
Well, all homeowners or just homeowners with decent pipes? I mean,
I think it's all homeowners, and across the United States, this is not just particular to Jackson. There are homes that are older, that predate 1986, 85, the 70s, 60s, and 70s have plumbing that have lead. Newer homes even may have some. There are limits that are allowed for lead in pipes, and there's some newer homes that may have some element, even though it's supposed to be below the limit. So it is not a concern or anything that needs to cause people to stop drinking water. As I said, there are filter units that you can get, countertop filter units. If you feel concerned that you can get to filter, just make sure that on the box it says that it is specific to filtering lead. But this is not a widespread issue, though we are treating it very seriously.
You said that you expect, I'm sorry.
No, you go ahead.
Okay, you said that you expect the levels when the houses that you retest to be lower. Is that because of flushing? I don't understand how the two are related.
Because, as Dr. Curry said, we believe that this was more of a transient issue, possibly related to the way the water chemistry on that particular day reacted with these homeowners' internal plumbing. And you have to understand the way these samples are taken. Because you want to get the highest level possible in the sample, they are told to take the sample first thing in the morning after water has been sitting for more than 6 hours. So if they had gotten up and flushed, let the water run for several minutes to flush that line, it's possible that they would not have gotten exceeded these actionable levels. So when they retest, they will take the same measures, but we want to see what those levels are in those homes at that time, so that we can make sure that they are properly advised. And the reason why we send the notification to all of our customers is this is an opportunity to educate on everyone on the issue, and so that if they have any concerns, they can take those measures. You can get your water tested at your home. But we want people to understand how they should be flushing their internal plumbing system before using water. I think Dr. Curry said you don't want to cook with hot water. These are just measures you take.
Are there any, we have time for one more question. And if you have follow-up questions that you think about as you're writing your story, you can shoot emails to us and we'll try to get them answered.
I have one question. So the process of testing water, the city sends letters to residents asking them to collect the water? How does that work?
No, we actually we receive a list of labels or a packet of labels with those addresses on. These are random samples. So when we receive that packet of labels with those addresses, my staff goes to those homes. We do not leave those sample kits on the doorstep. We talk to them about what they should, how they need to take the samples, and what this is for. And then we have them prepare the sample, and then our staff goes and physically picks those samples up. That's the process that they went through yesterday, making sure to make contact with the residents there to get those samples taken, and then going to pick those samples up today.
Is that the same as the state's process?
That is
It's called home dependent sampling?
this was the compliance sampling for lead and copper. But what we said was this is a home dependent, which means that it is related to the internal plumbing, not the drinking water that the city is providing.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
I'm sorry,